Welcome to the Ohio Valley Sports Blog Video Podcast. I'm BJ.
I'm Cody.
Alright, let's start out with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Coming off that win against Purdue, they're down, only scored 18 points in the first half, came out and just dominated the second half. Ian, what's your thoughts on this team heading into the Big Ten tournament?
I mean, if they can continue to play like they did in the second half of that Minnesota game, it's definitely a lot better than it did earlier. I mean, you think in the second half they shot 57%. They came out and they played with the things that you can't measure. They played with the energy, with the passion, with the motivation. They came out looked like the team that wanted it more. I mean, for the game, in the first game, Minnesota just kind of took it to them and blasted them in all of the major categories. They were out rebounded. They turned the ball over. Well, in the game the other day against Minnesota, Ohio State held a 35-25 rebounding advantage, only committed 11 turnovers for the game. If they continue to play like that, then I think their prospects in the conference tournament look a lot better. Now, obviously, this is only one game. You can't measure it entirely off of that. But if they continue this, then it feels a little bit more like something could go in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. This team, the concern is always offense, but I feel like we've beaten a dead horse on that point. So I'm going to point out the defense. The defense has to be spectacular for them to win. They have to want it more. They have to be the team that plays harder. In the first half, they looked abysmal. I mean, it was bad. But the second half, they came out. They scored 46 points. Like you said, they played with more heart. That's what they're going to have to play like, because offensively, they don't have enough talent. They're not talented enough to compete with all the other teams in Big Ten. But defensively, if they play with that hustle, they can. And there's no team in the Big Ten in particular that scares me. Michigan State getting healthier, I mean, obviously. But, I mean, Michigan, Ohio State played with... Michigan's in first place. I mean, Ohio State really should have won that game. They've beaten all the other teams in the Big Ten at least once. So, I don't know.
Well, they haven't beaten Michigan State yet. Let's not just assume they're going to beat
Oh,
Michigan
yeah,
State.
yeah.
They have a game left.
The last
with
game of the
Michigan
season.
State. If the tournament would be tomorrow, Ohio State would be the 5 seed. And we all know that's a huge disadvantage because you don't get that first round bye. You have to play an extra game. And even if you're the 4 seed, you're playing the 5 seed the next round. So you really, I mean, being the 4 or 5 seed really doesn't give you much of the advantage other than the bye. But as it stands right now, they can potentially move up into that 3rd seed with a couple of victories because 3 through 5 are only separated by a game. They're not going to catch Michigan State or Michigan for the 2 seeds because they're already at 11 wins. But what scares me, though, is if they would have to play that 12th seed, and whether it'd be like a Penn State or a Nebraska or somewhere like that, they've lost to teams like that. So I think the problem with Ohio State is they usually play up to their talent, but then when they play a team that sucks, they kind of play down. So hopefully they can get that corrected.
Let's move on to the team across the river, WVU, coming off the loss against Baylor. I mean, the bubble looks like it's pretty much busted at this point. Cody, is there anything that you can see outside of them obviously winning the Big 12 tournament and getting the automatic bid? Can you see them getting a large bid in any scenario?
Well, they still have, I think, 4 games left.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is it's Iowa State, Oklahoma, Kansas,
right,
and TCU. So if they went out and go 19-12 and then maybe win 2 games in the tournament, they could get in. But I think to this point they just have to win the Big 12 tournament, which is going to be nearly impossible because as it stands, they're only at 500 in the conference, which would make them a 7 or 8 seed. So they're going to be playing all the tough games with no buys.
Right. I was listening to the game on the radio the other day while I was working, and the post-game interview with Bob Huggins, I mean, he just ripped the team. I mean, he wasn't angry, but he was serious about it. He said he's never seen a team that doesn't play with heart like they don't play with heart. He doesn't know how many times he can tell them that they have to put their hands up on defense. I mean, he's pretty upset with them at this point in the season, but that was a game they had to win, and they should have won. I mean, they were leading all the first half. They came out in the second half, looked flat, and just let Baylor steamroll them in the second half. Like you said, they'd probably have to win out in the regular season to get in that large bid. And I just don't see that happening. I don't see them beating Oklahoma and Kansas. I can see them beating Oklahoma maybe, but Kansas is playing at another level right now.
I mean, I can understand why Bob Huggins would be upset, and I don't think it's just entirely because, lack of heart. I think in the loss against Texas, they were outscored 46-14 in the paint, and then in the loss against Baylor, they got outscored 38-12 in the paint. That's a problem. That's a big problem. Little bit of a problem. No, big problem. But I think at this point now, you must win 3 of the last 4 games. You must win 3 of these last 4. I mean, you have to beat Iowa State, you have to beat TCU, and you have to beat Oklahoma or Kansas. And if you can beat both, even better. But you have to beat one of them. This is the point now where West Virginia has their backs up against the wall, and it's time to see who the leaders are, who steps up, and who takes control. Because if not, then it's just another whatever season.
Right, and I think maybe next year they're going to be a little more poised. I mean, we got to remember, this team has no seniors on it. So, barring somebody thinking they can get drafted and leaving early, which I highly doubt, they're going to have everybody back plus their recruits coming in. So, I think Bob Huggins might see this year as a disappointment, but for fans who were expecting nothing this year and they're actually competing most games, it's a pleasant surprise for them.
Right, but I know West Virginia isn't particularly known as a basketball school, but when you root for a big school like WVU, there's no moral victories.
Right. But I'm just saying, I think this year they're going to get an NIT berth. Next year, I think they'll make the tournament.
Let's move on to OU. Playing up and down a lot lately. Ian, are you concerned about this?
I would have been if they had lost the last game, but they didn't. They went on the road and they beat Akron. And I can't tell you how big a deal that is. A 16-point win on the road at Akron. First time they've beaten Akron in the last 5 tries. They held them to 26.8% shooting and 4 assists for the entire game. They moved into a tie for second in the MAC East behind their next opponent, Buffalo, who comes to the Convocation Center having already lost to Ohio on their home floor. And they're tied with Akron for the 4th seed in the MAC tournament, which is huge because the top 4 seed get 2 byes in the MAC tournament. This is a huge confidence boost game for this team, who now can look ahead to this Buffalo game, understand that they have the home court advantage. They can come into their house, play their style of game, and pick up a big win over another top team in the MAC. Akron's a great team. Western Michigan, who they played very, very tight, is the number 1 seed in the MAC right now. It's not like they're up and down playing real good against good teams and playing really bad against bad teams. They're beating the bad teams, and they're holding their own against the great teams. And that's what the great teams do. They play great against great competition, and that's what this team has done so far. So I'm not that concerned.
All right, that sums it up. Let's move on. Continuing in basketball, but moving to the pros. The Cavaliers have lost 2 straight after winning their previous 6, and they're now 5 games back from the Atlanta Hawks for that 8th seed. Is 5 games for a team like the Cavaliers too much ground to make up in about a month left of the regular season?
I don't think the 5 games is too much for them to make up. My concern would more be how many teams are so close. I mean, if it was just them and then they were 5 games back of one team, I would feel a little bit better. But there's a lot of teams that are right in that range that the Cavs are.
Right.
I don't know. This year's just been such a disappointment. I mean, there are such high hopes coming into the season with Andrew Bynum. You have Kyrie Irving, that's going to be healthy for all season, and he has been so far. But I mean, it's just been a disappointment after disappointment. Um, Luau Dang has been nothing but a joke so far for the Cavs. They were reportedly trying to trade him, but couldn't find a partner. I mean, I like the Spencer Hawes deal, but I mean, Spencer Hawes and Andrew Bynum. I mean, Bynum's much better.
Yeah, you got more of a shooter in Hawes who can spread you out around, like perimeter wise, but not really much of an inside kind of.
So to sum it up, I don't see them making up the 5 games. I mean, even if they did, they'd get blasted by Indiana or Miami in the
True.
first round anyways.
True. Ian?
I mean, I don't think it's entirely out of the question for them to make up the 5 games. You figure in their last 10, they're 6-4, and you compare that to some of the teams that are ahead of them. I mean, Detroit's only 4-6 in their last 10. Atlanta is 2-8 in their last 10. And I can even see Washington kind of taking a spiral out of where they're at right now. I don't think they're that up at that top level. And remember, the Cavs have strung together some nice winning streak. Earlier this month, they had a 6-game win streak. The only 2 teams in the Eastern Conference this season that have had longer win streaks are Indiana and Miami. So, I mean, it's not like they can't finally start to put this together and make a big push. It's just a matter of do they want to.
Right, and I think this is what my concern is, because I did see the 6-4 stat and Atlanta 2-8, obviously moving in the wrong directions. But the next 6 games for the Cavaliers, they have to play Toronto, Oklahoma City, Utah, Memphis, San Antonio, Charlotte, who just keeps shooting up. I don't know if they could go 500 against a group like that. And that's what concerns me, because they have to play above 500 ball. And when you got teams like that in your next 6, I mean, if they go 2-4, I mean, they could see themselves 9 games back and their season just about over.
All right, let's move on. Let's play a game. Let's play playing.
Switching it up.
Switching it up from the
one-word game that
from
we
the
love.
one-word game. All right, Cody.
Okay.
You're Jim Boeheim.
Oh, cool. I'm Jim Boeheim.
Syracuse has lost 2 straight games after opening up the season with 20-something, 25 straight wins.
Yeah.
Pretty much made an ass of yourself against Duke.
Yeah.
Jumping up and down on the floor on Saturday night after, I mean, a 50-50 call that was probably the correct call. So, do you feel bad that you pretty much cost your team the game?
I mean, I didn't cost my team the game there. I mean, it's the inconsistency with the refs. What's a charge and what isn't nowadays? I mean, you have an exact same play early in their game get called a block, but then Duke, at Duke, with the game on the line, of course they're going to get the home call. I was just upset that there's inconsistency and they're screwing my players. That would have tied a game. We would have went up 1 with the free throw, and that the game could have been over. We could have walked out of there with the victory. But the inconsistency with the refs screwed us.
Ian, do you have anything to ask? We have
What
Mr.
can-
Boeheim
what-
with us.
What can your team do to get back on the winning track? I mean, a loss at home to Boston College of all teams, and then a road loss at Duke. What can your team do to get back on track?
I think we got to play smarter. I mean, we were turning the ball over. Tyler Ennis really didn't get anything going. They shut him down. Cooney couldn't make a 3. We just played bad offensively. The Boston College loss, I mean, they were playing with some heart in that one. I mean, it's never good to lose to the team that's last in your conference, but I mean, they were playing inspired that night. The Duke.
But don't you think that now you're going to get every team's best shot no matter what their record is? Shouldn't your team be prepared for that?
I think that's something our kids got to learn, because when you're the number 1 team in the nation, records are out the door. They want to beat you. So I think we need to learn to handle that a little better. And I mean, we don't want to be playing our best ball right now. We want to be playing our best ball in a couple weeks.
All right, Ian.
This is going to be the weirdest thing you're ever going to hear in your life.
You're former South Carolina NFL prospect, defensive end Davion Clowney. This morning you ran a
4.5
40, but you've only bench pressed 21 reps of. Did you see the weight?
225.
All right.
Yeah.
Cody, you want to lead off?
Yeah, my concern is I know people that we go to school with, Javavion, that bench press 12 reps of 225, and we just lift casually. Is that like a lack of motivation? Did you just get tired? I mean, what's going on?
I mean, I just feel like, now is not the time for me to really showcase all that I'm capable of. You get to me when I'm doing my field drills. You get to me when I'm doing my workouts for you personally on my pro day, and you'll see the real me. You're going to see the guy that cares a lot about this game. You're going to see the guy that wants to prove that he's the best at what he does. And I feel like regardless, the numbers here don't mean anything.
Well,
You don't question what I can do.
what about your lack of, you want to call it motivation during the regular season, because you really didn't produce on the field, and some say your stock's actually slipping in the draft because you weren't as good as you were the year before.
It's kind of hard to produce when you get double and triple teamed every time you're on one side of the line. I impact the game every single snap. Every snap I'm on the field, people know where I'm at. There's a radar that goes off. They know where I am, and they'll do everything in their power to stop me.
BJ?
Okay, you recently said at the Combine that you want to be known as the greatest football player that ever lived. Were you high when you said that?
No. I think if that's not your goal as a football player, then you're not in it for the right reasons. You want people to remember you for how great you are. And at the end of the day, I think that I have the talent enough to be that.
Okay. That was a nice job, Ian. That was more impressive than I thought it was going to be. Okay, let's move on to the next one. BJ is going to be Pirates GM Neil Huntington. I'll start this out. Glad to have you here, Neil. Taking time out of your busy schedule. I know spring training's coming up. Are you afraid to spend money? Do the Pirates even have money? I just saw a right fielder who hit 27 home runs go for $8 million, and we didn't sign Burnett, so assumably, was there money there? Like, what's going on?
We offered Burnett a 1-year, $12 million contract. We weren't going to offer any more to a 37-year-old starting pitcher. I don't care what he did last season, 37 years old, we weren't going to offer him more than $12 million. $12.
$12. That's all you get. $12.
As far as are we spending money? Yes. For the Pirates as an organization to win, we have to spend the majority of our money going into the Dominican and into the draft. Do you want us to win 1 year and then suck the next 5 like the Brewers? Or do you want us to be a consistent winner like the Tampa Bay Rays?
No, I see what you're coming from, but my point is, were you afraid of a guy like Nelson Cruz given his PED past, or was he just not on your radar?
Why would we want a low-character guy in the locker room like that? I mean, he's a cheater. We don't want cheaters in Pittsburgh.
Okay. Ian, anything?
What are you going to do to address the situation at first base? I mean, it's not like right now there's a wealth of talent there, and it's time. Don't you think it's high time to finally start to make a move and solid up that position a little bit?
Going into the season, we're going to go to the platoon of Gabby Sanchez and Andrew Lambeau. Andrew Lambeau was our minor league player of the year last year, hit 32 home runs between AA and AAA. We're going to give him a shot. He could not be any worse than Garrett Jones was last year. I have shown that ever since we've been contenders at the trade deadline that we will make trades. So if he's not producing for us, we will address it at the trade deadline.
All right, and one more question for you, Neil, while we have you here. It just came out recently that last year Ike Davis was apparently battling an injury the whole year. I think on an oblique or something. That he hit it from the trainers all year. Given that, and knowing what he did before, is he still on our radar, or is he still on your guys' radar, or is that something you'll address as the spring goes forward?
If we can get him for a mid-level prospect, that's a trade we're going to make. I mean, he's a guy who hit 27 home runs when healthy, so that's a guy you want on your team.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Very professional there, BJ.
That was
nice.
good.
Stuff.
That was the classiest you've been in a long time, isn't it?
All right. All right.
All right, Cody, you're Oklahoma City Thunder forward Kevin Durant.
Sweet.
Okay.
Okay.
Before the game against Miami, you've all but locked up the MVP. Since you lost to Miami at your home court, there's been a little bit of questions about it. But my question to you is, with Russell Westbrook coming back, does he hurt the team? Because when Reggie Jackson's running the point, the offense moves seamlessly. You're scoring 40 plus a night. Then you have Russell Westbrook come in, and he seems to just break up that chemistry you have.
You're right. He breaks up the chemistry, but it's not because it's in a bad way. He just hasn't been playing with us. I mean, I want to be known as a guy that can put up 40 for my team when he needs to, but I don't need to do that every night. I mean, look at LeBron James over in Miami. He doesn't put up the scoring numbers he did in Cleveland because he has a better team around us. Russell Westbrook makes us better. I mean, so you're going to tell me you're going to draft Reggie Jackson in a draft over Russell Westbrook? There's no way. That's an all-star point guard. And had he not gone down in the playoffs last year, we might have won that title.
What would you think of Reggie Jackson starting at the point guard and then moving Russell Westbrook to the 2 guard for more of a pure scorer standpoint?
I could see Coach doing something like that, but I mean, that's just not on me, though. I don't make those kind of decisions. Coach will do what he feels best for our team. And if that's putting Jackson and Westbrook on the court at the same time, that's fine.
You seem to have kind of developed your game more wholly as a scorer and even more on the defensive end of the ball. Can you point to one thing that kind of led to that, or is it just an all-around necessity thing?
Well, it's definitely a necessity, but when you go to the finals and you lose 4-1 and you see your buddies hold up trophies, I mean, you kind of get motivated. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't jealous of LeBron right now. I mean, he's got 2 championship rings, 4 MVPs. I mean, that's where I want to be when I'm done with my career.
All right, Ian.
Saving the best for last here.
Oh, your Penguins head coach and USA Hockey head coach Dan Bylsma. U.S. was a
we'll get into what the U.S. was.
Looking pretty good after the preliminary round, and they fell on their face.
Okay, I got a question for Dan here. Okay, people say you don't know how to win when it counts. I mean, your teams, you go into the playoffs with the 2 best players in the world. You can't seem to win a cup. You go to the Olympics and dominate the meaningless rounds, but when it comes down to it, your team doesn't even score a goal. So what would you say to those people that say you don't know how to win in big games?
2009. That's all I have to say. I've proven that I can take a team to the top level. I did it in 2009. We did it in 2009. As long as we get a team that buys into what we're selling and that will lay themselves out every single play, every single time they step on the ice for our team, we'll be fine. Now, when you have people that don't want to buy into it, when you have people that can't physically do it, that's when problems arise. And I think that's been our problem the last couple of years. We've had people that either don't want to do it or can't buy into it. And I think we've weeded out those problems. So, to the people that say that we can't get it done when it counts, I say we've done it before and we're going to do it again.
All right, looking at the Olympics, do you think it was Canada's dominance in that game that kept you off the scoreboard, or was it a lack of effort from your players?
You know, I don't want to say that it was a lack of effort, because anytime the United States and Canada meet, you're obviously going to get maximum emotion and maximum effort out of all of your guys. It's a big game, and both sides really want to win it. I think for whatever reason, going down against Canada kind of took the wind out of our sails a little bit. I felt that up to that point, we had kind of, played our style of game, and to fall behind like that, and I think it just kind of took the wind out of our sails. We were never really able to get going again, and I think that kind of just started the snowball effect.
Okay, and one last question for you here. Going back to now, your focus is on the Penguins and winning the Stanley Cup this year. Are you concerned about Evgeny Malkin and his mindset after, Russia was embarrassed in Sochi? You think that's going to affect Gino back in the NHL, or you think he can just put it behind him?
I have no concern about Evgeny Malkin's level of play. I know he's one of the best players in the world, and I know that he's going to come back to our team just as focused, just as determined, and just as driven as he's ever been. I have no doubts that he can continue to play at a very high level, and I have absolutely no doubts that we will be able to rely on him and his mindset to get us to the top level where we want to be.
Okay.
All right, let's move back to us being ourselves.
That was fun, though.
I think
That was
fun, though.
I think we need the mask though.
We do need the mask.
We'll work on
We'll
that.
get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, times are tough.
Yeah.
Let's take a more in-depth look at the Olympic hockey. It was a fun tournament to watch, but
Man,
Like-
the ending sucked.
like we said when you were Dan Bilesma, the USA pretty much just fell flat on their face. So, how disappointing was it?
I mean, I think it was extremely disappointing. I mean, going into the Canada game, you knew it was going to be 50-50. I
Mhm.
mean, a penalty, a breakaway, somebody scoring, some little error was going to make the difference. But I mean, they just dominated us, and we just never recovered. We didn't even show up. We showed up for about a period against Finland, and then they ended up putting 5 goals on us. And I thought that was something the USA prided themselves on this tournament, was playing tough defense and not giving up a lot of goals. But I mean, to put it into perspective, Ian, the US
And BJ.
and BJ, the USA, their offense went scoreless for the last 138 minutes of the tournament. Yes.
Yeah,
That's a problem.
That is a long time to not, especially with the players on the roster of their caliber.
Yeah.
Just
I feel like the guy that was the biggest, if I could single out one player who was a disappointment to me, it's Patrick Kane. 4 assists, no goals in the entire tournament. And he had 2 penalty shots in the bronze medal game and failed on both of them. This is one of the guys where if I were to take a pick of just about any player that I want on a penalty shot, Patrick Kane is probably at the top of my list. It's just his play was so disappointing to me from a guy that I really expected to be a contender for MVP of the tournament. Like he just never showed up. The rest of the team, I felt for the better part of the first couple of games leading up into that Canada game, had really played at an exceptional level, but Patrick Kane just never got the ball rolling, and that ultimately ended up hurting the U.S.
Yeah, looking at the Canada game in particular, the first period was really exciting. It was back and forth. I mean, Carey Price and Jonathan Quick just standing on their heads. From probably the late first period for just the rest of the game, the United States didn't have a quality scoring chance. I mean, Canada did not let them come down the middle of the ice. When they did get it in the offensive zone, it was on the edges, and they took terrible angled shots. Canada, I saw a tweet. They said Canada this tournament was reminiscent of the classic '90s Red Wings teams, where it's just so dominant defensively. I mean, because they only put 1 goal on the board, but it didn't matter. I mean, the United States had maybe 3 quality scoring chances that game, and that was it.
right. And speaking of Canada, I mean, they just dominated this tournament. Like BJ was saying, they gave up 3 goals in 7 games. I mean, yeah, right. I mean, everybody wanted to say, well, where's the offense?
They didn't need it.
Great. And and then they want to say, well, where's Crosby? Why isn't Crosby scoring? He scored in the gold medal game to really put
When
it.
it really counted.
Yeah. So I mean, to put this into perspective, the previous record before that in the modern era was, of course, Canada. They're tied with the USSR with 5.
Mhm.
They give up 5 goals, and they beat that by 2. I mean, just that's 0.43 goals a game. I don't know if you could say USA lost this as much as you could say Canada just dominated and won this.
Yeah, Canada was. I mean, even the game against Latvia. Even the game against Latvia, where it raised a couple eyebrows, they had 55 shots on goal.
Yeah.
I mean, if that goaltender is off his game a little bit, I mean, they win 6-1,
At least.
6-2.
if
I-
not more.
55 shots on goal is pretty impressive, and like you said, I mean, .43 goals against per game. That's just ridiculous.
And what's even more funny to me is like all the pundits had been talking leading into the tournament. Well, where's Canada? The biggest concern for Canada was their defense.
And their
Their
goaltending.
defensive back, the back of their lineup was so question mark ridden because everybody knew how great their forwards were, and it worked out to be just the opposite. Like their defense and their goaltending was the best part of their team, and it worked out in their favor, and that's why they have a gold medal.
Right, I think it's safe to say that Mike Babcock and Claude
Julian
and the
Mr.
rest,
Potato Head.
yeah, and everybody else that had everything to do with putting that team together really knew what they were doing and what they wanted, and we didn't.
Let's look at the next half of the NHL season. Coming off the Olympic break, and for those who played in the Olympics, what do you expect in the second half of this season? Do you have any concerns with those who played in the Olympics? And do you think those who were snubbed, like Marc-Andre Fleury and James Neal, do you feel like they'll have an edge to their game?
I think James Neal will. I think Fleury was devastated at first, but then realized this might have been the best thing for him. But I think a player that's really just his confidence is going to go through the roof, and he's going to continue to play even better is Olli Mata. I mean, he was playing really well before the break, and he went over there and played with like the best of the world, like, and he held his own.
Yeah.
He was up there with defensemen in points for the tournament. I mean, he really did well, and same thing with UC Jokinen. He was a scorer that could maybe give us a boost in the second half. I mean, and then with everybody else, I think you're just going to get what you would normally get with Crosby and Malkin. I think they're going to be who they are.
For me, I'm really hoping that Marc-Andre Fleury comes back with an edge. As a Penguins fan, I was really glad that he was left off Team Canada because with such a heavy workload this year, he needed the rest. And on top of that, I want him to have that edge, to be pissed off, to say, you know what, I'm still one of the best Canadian goaltenders there is,
Right.
and I should have been on the Olympic team. James Neal, I'm hoping he doesn't play with an edge because he plays with too much of an edge already. I mean, if he comes out with a really big edge in the second half of the season, he could spend the majority of it in the penalty box.
Well, that depends what kind of an edge he plays with. Because if he plays with the kind of edge that I want him to play with, then he's going to set records for most goals scored in half a season. But if he plays with the wrong kind of edge, then yeah, he's known for. Then he's going to set records for most time spent in the penalty box in half a season. I think that, this Penguins team has the ability to, focus in on what they need to focus in on. And right now, what they need to focus in on is getting to the playoffs healthy, safe, as a cohesive unit, focused on the task at hand, and that is bringing the Stanley Cup back home to Pittsburgh. That's it. That is the one goal. Olympics aside, it's over, it's done. Nothing else about it. It's time to focus. Let's get back to the NHL. Let's get back to bringing the cup home. Okay. That's it.
All right, let's wrap it up. Do you guys have anything else you want to add?
No, I just hope Paul Martin comes back sooner rather than later because, that's just what happens when you go play. Injuries happen.
Ian?
I hope that one day we can get to a level where the NFL scouting combine isn't as big of a deal as everybody likes to make it out to be, and we can just play football.
It's kind of like a reality show of the NFL. It's just kind of garbage. Just on that note, with the whole Jason Collins thing playing last night, the world didn't explode.
Yes.
It's not a big deal.
We're still here.
He's gay.
And he plays basketball.
He plays basketball. He doesn't do anything spectacular at basketball, but he plays. He filled his role last night, and hopefully we'll get to the day where whether a player is gay or not isn't a big deal.
It's the sport. That's it.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.